Hey all, this is Owen2Boku, and I'm coming at you with another review of, you guessed, as I'm covering up the season part yet again, The Cosby Show Season 4, as I'm using the cover for that still. And we are on for Season 4, Episode 7, Autumn Gifts. Now this one starts with Rudy going to play with her neighbor, Mrs. Hickson, played by Eileen Heckart, who is this, elderly neighbor who lives alone. She's forgetful about some things. They're playing goldfish, acting like very distinguished members of society. Hey, Kristen, sort of using British accents in the whatnot, Governor. Sort of like that, eh? But, they're playing together, and Mrs. Hickson forgets things sometimes. Her son actually calls and asks her if she's taking, I'm going to say it's a diabetes pill. They don't necessarily say it is diabetes, or maybe they do. They mention it. I can't remember if they fully said it or not, but it's like a diabetes pill, and she can forget things if she doesn't take it. Her son calls and tells her to take it. She isn't too kindly. I forget the barb she says, but she tells her son off with the funny thing. And, she leaves it alone. Rudy comes back home, and at home, Heathcliff Huxtable's there, and his dad's there, Russell Huxtable. They were having lunch together in a fun time. Russell's got, chicken wings and ribs, and Heathcliff has, rice cakes and vegetables, to where, he took his dad's bag of food and was sniffing it and smelling it and, trying to sneak food, but his dad, Russell, would see it every time. And there's even a part where they're going over to Mrs. Hickson, and he steals a rib, and he's like, son, I saw you took that rib, put it back. So Heathcliff's still trying to do what he does. But they ask her how, they ask Rudy how Mrs. Hickson's doing. She said she's fine, and she kept forgetting her cards though, but she says she's trying to fake me out and do all these things she usually does. And Heathcliff's like, well, she's forgetting again, huh? And she's like, yeah, but she's fine. She's doing it to fake me out. And Russell and Heathcliff end up going over there to see Mrs. Hickson, and Mrs. Hickson, is sort of leading them on, talking about age, being an old wisecracker, and really trying to show Heathcliff and Russell that she's fine, and, that she's good. And, Heathcliff and Russell actually find a way to get her to take her pill. She does, but she hid it under her tongue and, threw it in the garbage can. And Heathcliff, who actually goes back to check on her, finds it in the garbage can. And also, Rudy told her father, Heathcliff, that, she does it a lot and she'll hide it under her tongue. She did that once when her son was visiting. And, he eventually does go back, gets Mrs. Hickson, after, telling her that she needs to take the pill. And, she does it, and then he says, say, I think it's, the serendipitous spring is good with the seashells by the seashore. And, she starts to say it, and Heathcliff said, her whole, false teeth and everything cluttered out. But no, she basically just spit out the pill, and he makes her take it. And he's telling this to Claire, and Claire's basically saying, well, you're going to do this every time. How are you going to make sure she takes it? And he's like, well, I don't know. And Claire Huxtable comes up with this, interesting thing to get Mrs. Hickson to do this. And they come up with a plan to invite Mrs. Hickson over. Mrs. Hickson's wondering, what's going on. And Claire wants Mrs. Hickson to sign a documented form where if she takes her pill, Rudy can come over, but if she doesn't, Rudy's not allowed over anymore. And she doesn't want to sign it. She refuses. She's like, in many ways, her life, her choice, sort of like, my body, my choice, or whatever you want to say, if you can relate anything to her currently, and she doesn't want to do it, and then, Heathcliff and all of them use a bit of reverse psychology, like Heathcliff goes and gets a, giant sub sandwich hoagie, he puts a whole bunch of salt on it, like really layering it up. He bites it once, and then, he pretends to have a heart attack and falls over, and, Mrs. Hickson's like, oh, that's not gonna get me, it's not gonna work, you're wasting your time, and then all of a sudden you hear, Vanessa Huxtable, come down, and, she's arguing with, Elvin Thibodeau and her sister, Sondra Huxtable Thibodeau, so they're back in this episode finally, about how, she needs to brush her teeth. I'm fine. I've not brushed my teeth in 6 months. I'm good. I don't need to do it. But Vanessa, you'll lose your teeth. So, having it up with the fact and, everything like that, she, sits down pouting and, or Sondra and Elvin are getting on about it. And then all of a sudden, Theo comes in finally in this episode. And Claire's like, Theo, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Cockroaches, Mom. I'll see you later. But Theo, aren't you going to eat? You haven't eaten in 3 years. Mom, I haven't eaten in 3 years. I will be fine. I'm good. I'm good for it. I'm strong. I'm strong as an ox. I'll see you later. Whoa! And, he basically grabs hold of the door and falls down. Mrs. Hickson, is getting an idea that these people really care for her. Rudy really cares for her. And she actually agrees to take her medicine and do it to where she won't forget and possibly die of diabetes or whatever she has. And as she agrees to sign the contract to do it, she sort of keels over slowly like this. You have Heathcliff and everybody else wondering if she's okay. They all get very close, and then she gets up suddenly and goes, see, I can play too. And it was a very nice, sweet little scene. There's a side part to the show where, like I said, Sondra Huxtable Thibodeau and her husband Elvin Thibodeau come back home, and apparently they've gotten the wilderness store they wanted to do up and running. Elvin has some sleeping bags he couldn't sell. He wants everybody to try. He asks Heathcliff and Russell. They don't want to sleep in the backyard where they want to test them. They ask Vanessa. Vanessa doesn't want to do it. So you have Elvin and Sondra go to Claire. And Claire doesn't want to do it either. And, she's setting up for it. And Elvin actually goes, well, Mrs. Huxtable, I guess I could understand, you being a woman and being pretty and don't want to mess up your hair and your figure. I can understand that. I get that. All women are like that. Oh, Elvin, you think this is about my figure? You think I don't want to mess up my figure? Well, you're on. I'll take your challenge and sleep outside, and I'll come to you with my hair messed up. And, so they actually get her to do it, and Sondra's like, Elvin, that was great reverse psychology, getting our mother to fall for it. And then, Sondra leaves the kitchen, and Elvin's just sitting there alone like, what? So, meaning Elvin meant every word of what he said. And towards the end of the episode, Claire Huxtable's in bed, in the sleeping bag. They even got Heathcliff to be in the sleeping bag. They left the window open so the cold air would come in. They leave the room. They say they can't feel their faces. Heathcliff drank a lot of water that night, so he needs to use the bathroom, but he can't get his zipper unstuck. He asks Claire for help. She can't get her zipper unstuck, so he's left to slide out of bed in the sleeping bag and try to get to the bathroom at the end of the episode, which is very funny and hilarious to see Bill Cosby perform the physical comedy that he can do. And overall, a very fun episode of caring and making sure, we can have our loved ones as long as possible. And hopefully there is no stubbornness with taking meds or how we live or what we should do. And, I've had stuff like this similar in my own life where I've done foolish things like that. And I've known people who've done something like this. So I can see how this episode relates to me. The characters who were good in this, again, I'm going to give, I know he's been my top pick for a lot of these episodes. Bill Cosby's always good. Bill Cosby, Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable. I have to also give it to Earl Hyman as Russell Huxtable, his father. Great performance being back. Good fun to see, Earl Hyman play Russell Huxtable as always. I have to give a little nod to Jeffrey Owens, Elvin Thibodeau, with the way he thought he used the reverse psychology and just his clueless nature. Elvin just being great, and Jeffrey Owens plays that off so well. And then Eileen Heckart, who played Mrs. Hickson as the guest star. Great person who lives on their block, on the street in Brooklyn, great neighbor, the dry wit, the, wanting to live her life and being stubborn wit, and just, she played a great character in this episode too. And overall, Autumn Gifts, again, I wouldn't say is a needle mover for the season, but again, it does have a great moral message for the show, and again, it was just well done in my opinion. But what do you guys think? What do you think of the Cosby Show? Leave a message in the comments down below, and we will get this discussion going. Until then, this is 012 Boku coming at you with another review, and I will see you guys again later. Alright?